How
This
many sessions do we
conference
have?
will now be recorded.
It's 4. So I just heard the indication that it's now being recorded. So hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Quanesha Johnson. Just giving a refresher of who I am. I know I haven't met Alicia, so welcome Alicia to our time together today. And we have done a series, and we are on our final part of our 4-part career development series for everyone. And we're going to be talking today about 5 ways to sharpen your interview skills. And so as always, I want to know how everyone's doing, because by profession, although I'm giving this information and I love educating, I'm a therapist. I'm also by profession. So I'm really into how everyone's doing and feeling. And I think it's so important. So I'm just going to ask everyone, you can unmute yourself. You can just throw in the chat. Just give me one word, right? Just real simple today. One word to describe how you're feeling right now. Not how you woke up this morning feeling, how you are wanting to feel later. And this is a catch. You can't say tired, because it's a given that we're all tired because you're just all busy. I heard you had a lot of assignments to do. So just wanting to just know how are my people doing today? So let's see. Okay. All right. So to see how we're feeling. Okay. So Alicia says busy. Okay. So busy is what you're doing, Alicia, but how are you feeling about being busy? So give me something about that. Sarah says blessed. Love it. Feeling blessed. I am too. I get to be here with you and I love doing this work. Bailey says frustrated. Bailey, I am so sorry that you are feeling frustrated. I hope everything is okay. I hope you're not frustrated because you're here with me. I hope that it's, that everything works out, right? I want to remind everyone always just to stop a second, take some deep breaths, get into to really be in check with how you're feeling so you can give yourself what you need. Okay, Billy, no, he said it's not you, it's fine. Yes, so just letting you know, that however you're feeling, I always stop and do this because feelings are not right or wrong, they just are. But I want everyone, when we're learning about ourselves in our career world, we got to check in with us. So Tiffany says she's spread thin. Me too, spread thin. Let's see. Of course, Bailey. I love when I'm busy. Alicia, I love that. You love busy? Okay, yes, I love busy too, to a degree. To a degree, I love some busy. Let's see. What else are my friends saying? Okay. Energized. Alice, you're energized? Go make some more paper airplanes and throw them around. Okay. All right. Alicia says, I'm with my children where I can flourish all of this unconditional love. I love it. I love it. I love it. We're busy. Got a little bit of frustration. Hoping that gets better. Greg says different. I'm not sure what that means, Greg. You're feeling different. I'm not sure what that means, but okay.
You want me to explain?
I'm glad you're. Yeah, I want to hear about Greg. I got to hear your voice while I'm here. I hear your voice so much, so go ahead, explain so we could get into our topic today.
So like I'm a morning person, right? So like I usually wake up right early and stuff. Today it was like kind of sluggish, but then like I got back into like my groove and stuff. So like it was just different.
Gotcha. Okay. And that's good. I'm glad you're back in your groove. But I did this to start us off, just to be recognizing what we are experiencing and adhering to that. So if we're frustrated, if we're tired, I want you all to, throughout the day, to ask yourself, what do you need? How are you doing? Do that self-check-in. I think that's really important. Okay, so let's get busy. Let's talk. So today we're talking about 5 ways to sharpen your interview skills. And so although we're talking about interviewing, what we're going to do today, and I'm going to give you 5 ways, they're numbered, but because everything that we talked about prior built on this topic, we're going to be doing some sort of a review. So there are going to be some things that you have already discussed, that we've already gone over, that are familiar to you, but it's very, very important that you really just pay attention to. I numbered each thing. We're specifically going to talk about 5, and there are topics under those 5, okay? So 5 ways to sharpen your interview skills. So the first thing I want to talk about, since we're talking about interviewing, is understanding the purpose of an interview. And so if I ask someone here, what's the purpose for having an interview in the first place? What would you say? And remember, you're welcome to unmute and you're welcome to throw an answer in the chat. What is the purpose of an interview?
To get questions. You got it.
I think the purpose of an interview is for you to see if you're a good fit for the employer and also to see if the employer is a good fit for you, because it works both ways. It's just not you being a good fit for them. You have to also make sure that that job is a good fit for you as well.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Absolutely. Greg, were you going to share something?
Basically the same thing she said. You just want to make sure like you're comfortable with your surrounding, and like say it's a job you thought you want, make sure it's not a job that you thought it was like all good and stuff, and then it's like it has downfalls and doesn't go the way you expected.
Absolutely. What the two of you said, the combination, perfect. The employer, it's a two-way street. So the employer needs to find out about if you're the best candidate for that position, and then you need to find out if it's a good opportunity for you. So don't skip that part of it. Don't skip part two, because everything that pays a paycheck or grants a salary is not always the best for you. So it's a two-way street. So that's the purpose of an interview. All right. They want to find out, can you do the job? Will you do the job? And will you fit into their company? Can you do the job? Will you do the job? And will you fit in? Right. So remembering those three things. Okay. So let's get busy. Okay. So the first thing that we are going to, and we're reviewing, remember, I had talked to you before about the idea of sharpening your axe. So I'm going to explain again what that is very briefly. So we sharpen our axe. So this says here, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. So an axe is a strength multiplier, right? So you could be the most intense lumberjack, you know, strong, you can chop down all of the trees, you think, because of your physical strength. But if that axe is dull, you won't get anywhere. So that strong lumberjack won't. So what we want to look at, everything we've been doing in this career development series, everything that you do with resume, everything we talk about with interview, we talked about how we see ourselves, we talked about communication, everything, that is a part of you sharpening your axe. We don't want to go into an interview just going into an interview, just having someone filling out an application, having someone call you and saying, what time can you have the interview? You say 4 o'clock and then you just go. You in advance are sharpening your axe. You're learning, you're improving before and after every process that you're involved in, right? And all of the magic happens for you once you sharpen those skills. So always remember, it may seem tedious, some of the things we've gone over in the past. Do this to your resume. But the whole idea is if we do these things ahead of time, if we sharpen our axe, when we go to chop that down, get to that interview, we will be prepared. So we want to sharpen our interview skills, sharpen our axe. The work is done ahead of time. We want to be proactive and not always reactive when it comes to our career and our personal lives as well. And everyone, you're always welcome. Just reminding, if you have questions, comments, you can unmute, you can throw an answer or a comment in the chat, because I love hearing from you. Okay, so number 1, I said I was going to give you 5. Know who you are. 5 ways to sharpen your interview skills. So what do I mean by know who you are? And this is where we're going to go back to something we talked about before. So what we discussed before is the idea of conquering imposter syndrome and building confidence. And if you're not, for those of you who haven't been here, or just to refresh you, what conquering imposter syndrome is and building confidence, that presentation that we give. So basically, imposter syndrome is the experience of feeling like a fraud, right? That could be intellectually, that could be professionally, feeling like you don't belong somewhere, or that you're not supposed to have that job. You're achieving and like it feels unreal. not only do you feel that way, you feel inadequate, and then you don't feel good enough. You feel like you don't belong in a situation. And it's not just the feeling of that, of fraud. It just feels like everyone's going to know it too. So number one I have for you, and you can write these down, you will get a copy of this, but number one is knowing who you are, knowing what you struggle with. So we're sharpening our interview skills because we need to know who we are. We need to know how we see ourselves, because that's going to impact everything that we do thereafter. If we lack confidence, you bring that to the interview. If you lack confidence, you're bringing that to the resume. So understanding who you are, understanding how you see yourself, working through that process. Number one.
Hi. Have a seat. How are you? The students, they're actually in their summer. Let me turn my camera off.
Okay, yeah, Tiffany has a meeting, so sorry about that. She has a meeting with a student. So it's not that feeling of just you feel that way, but knowing someone will find it out. So number one is knowing who you are. And there's a process to that. It takes time. It's understanding that what we have to do to know who we are, remember this is step one, is acknowledge and celebrate. I'm only drawing from, we talked about this before, but one thing we can do to understand who we are, to understand what we're doing, and look at how we see ourselves, is to slow down and pay attention. Just earlier, Alicia said she's busy, right? And she loves busy, and she enjoys busy because things go faster. And busy is beautiful because it means that you have things to do. And my hope always is the busy is good. We're doing things in life we enjoy. We're spending time with family. We're exercising. We're doing everything great. But an important part is that we also understand when it's time to slow down and pay attention. So when we're conquering imposter syndrome and we're building confidence, we have to slow down and pay attention to what's going on. We got to pay attention to what we're doing. What are our fears? How earlier I gave you the activity of how are you feeling? You bring these things into an interview. So the important part is that you slow down and you look at things and examine them. Also taking time, and this is an important part, and we'll talk about this in a couple of slides, of noting and noticing your accomplishments in every aspect of your life. Know how you achieve personally, understand your accomplishments professionally. Once again, we will go over that part. Understanding your accomplishments professionally. I'm not saying no job titles, no accomplishments. Know what you've done. I gave you the example before, and I'll refresh on if someone is your teacher. So let's say I asked the audience, I said to you guys, who have you ever had a great teacher that you don't forget, that you remember what they taught you, they were kind? And so then I said, have you ever had a teacher that wasn't very nice to you? Maybe you didn't learn a lot. And so if we look at just the title teacher, then it's not all encompassing. If we just take a title of something, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. We need to know that teacher I named that was so good, what are that teacher's accomplishments? It may be different. That teacher who taught you a lot probably spent a lot of time on their lesson plans and grading and doing things for the school. Maybe they're part of the school community in different ways. They might be a coach. The teacher that's not so favorable has the same title, but maybe doing different things. So what I'm asking you to do in number one, step one to sharpening those interview skills is to identify who you are by slowing down, paying attention. We're not getting caught up in the title of what you do for a living. We're looking at accomplishments. What did I accomplish? Sometimes when we have the imposter syndrome, we can't see ourselves for who we really are, and we don't have that confidence. So we need to slow down and know what our accomplishments are. The other thing I ask you to do is to share those accomplishments with people who care about you so that they can serve as reminders. They're serving as reminders. When I'm in a therapy session and I have my clients tell me something, what I'm able to do from their information is to remind them of what they've accomplished and what they've done. So number two, so remember, number one was know who you are. Number two is using good communication. This is a fresh message because we just talked about this recently. Number 2 for sharpening your interview skills is utilizing good communication. What is communication? Can someone tell me what communication is if they remember from our last conversation? What is communication? In your own words.
It's like an exchange of information.
You have your paper in front of you. Yes, absolutely. Anybody else? What's communication? This is an example of no communication. So this is an example of it right here. So that's perfect. We'll start there. What is communication? It's the exchange of messages. It's intentional listening and clear expression. It's verbal and nonverbal messages. So if you want to sharpen your communication skills, I am giving you 5 with all refreshers of what we discussed. You have to use good communication. An interview is an exchange. So the interviewer is giving you something and you're giving something back. So there's an exchange there. You have to not only be able to answer the questions, right? You have to listen to what the question is. I don't know about you all. Have you ever had an experience where you've been in an interview or someone's giving you a question and you hear them, but you miss the translation of it or the understanding, so you have to ask them to repeat it? So in communication, we're exchanging information, exchanging messages. It's intentional listening, clear expression, and then it's a verbal and nonverbal piece to it. So if we want to sharpen interview, we're working on what we talked about last week. We're using good communication skills. We're understanding communication is an exchange. We want to be in an interview. We want to give off the verbal and the nonverbal. We're mindful of our words. We're mindful of what we're saying, our body language. What's our face saying? I gave the example last week of going into a place and having a mask on, but someone read my eyes and they were correct. They saw I'm not pleased with something they were doing, and they addressed me by looking at my eyes. So you're noting in communication when you're in an interview, remember, we're in a pandemic. So you may be in an interview that's face-to-face, maybe, depending on the circumstance, or across the screen. And so ultimately, the same thing stands. What is your body language? What are you saying? Being mindful of that. And so just going over these few things here. We're always wanting to make a good first impression. And basically, you're making that impression with an employer within 30 seconds. Within 30 seconds, you're making that impression. So if I am talking to you all now, one thing I want to think about is my posture. What am I doing? So remember, we're talking about communication. And if we're sharpening our interview skills, we're working on communication. Posture. So I'm in a virtual interview. You're in a virtual interview. Should we be slumped back in the chair like this? Should we be, as they're asking us questions, lean forward with our hands? What is this? You all tell me. What is this when you're talking to someone and they have their head tilted and that hand supporting? What message am I giving by doing this?
Uninterested.
What else? Slash what?
Tired.
Tired. What else? Anybody else?
Bored. Oh.
Bored, anything. But if I'm in an interview, is that what I want to give? I don't want to give that. No. And so I'm mindful of my posture. I'm mindful of what my face is saying. I don't see many of your faces now, right? I can't see it because your cameras are off. But ultimately, what your face is saying makes a difference. You can appear to someone bored, disinterested, tired, and we want to make an impression because the interviewer, as we said, what's the purpose of it? They want to know if you're the best candidate for that job. So if I'm looking for someone versed in customer service, do I want to see someone in front of me for that preliminary process of interviewing that looks disinterested? I may not as an employer. So, because remember, it's the purpose of it. They want to know if you're the best candidate, and it may start right there. Before we're opening our mouth sometimes, our communication, verbal and not just verbal, non-verbal makes a difference. We want to maintain good eye contact. I know eye contact, feels uncomfortable sometimes. We don't have to do a stare down, right? Just healthy eye contact. When we give good eye contact, we're letting someone know we're paying attention to what they said. We're interested. The example I gave before was with communication is being on our cell phone and the idea that we're multitasking, right? In our mind, we are. But someone's talking to us, but we're looking down at our phone or we're looking at TV. So the important part in communication, right? We're talking about interviewing is giving good eye contact, being mindful of my body language. What is my body saying? Then when I go to the verbal side, my voice, not just my voice, my tone, like what does my tone sound like? Am I talking so lightly that someone can't hear me? Am I talking too loud, right? Being mindful. Am I nervous? So I'm talking really fast, right? The volume. So just being mindful of all of those things, because once again, we're talking about how do we sharpen? We're sharpening the axe. We're getting ahead of things. And so these are the ideas of step one, we're knowing who we are. I'm going to always be repetitive to remind you because we're talking about 5 ways. Know who we are, what our accomplishments are, good communication. How are we communicating that we want that position? It cannot solely be on, I'm just going to say these words, or I showed up to the interview. It's these communication skills that are so important when you're interviewing. It's paying attention to those things. You're translating something. So it's your verbal, but it's also the importance of your nonverbal skills. Step three, being prepared. We have to always be prepared. And prepared means the sharpening the axe. We're doing things ahead of time. And so what's one way that we're going to be prepared for our interview process, for sharpening those skills? We talk about this, and that way is your resume. So our resume connects to the interview even before we get the call. What we're putting down on that piece of paper makes a difference. And so that resume is that formal document, and it's supposed to represent that equation of who you are. And that goes back to knowing who you are. You have to, if you're going to put this document together, you have to understand who you are. What are the things you've done? What have you accomplished? What are your strengths? And remember, that goes along with what you can do for that employer. So once again, who you are, what you've done, what are you strong in? And that has to match up with what you can do for that employer. Before you go to the interview, understanding this equation is so important. And this is how you sharpen the skill for interviewing. Understanding you, what you've done, what you're strong in. Because ultimately, when we think about the whole idea of interviewing, that confidence is so important. As I stated a few slides back, you're knowing what you've done and that the titles are the titles. And we get so caught up. And then when we're writing our resume, we're literally writing down just duties and not accomplishments. So ultimately, your employer to be, your potential employers, could Google job descriptions for anything. What you bring to the paper and what you've done makes the difference, because the title is just a title, but what you've accomplished there makes a difference. So if you've worked in the service industry, and done the duties of service, great. But did you provide impeccable service? Did you go above and beyond to meet customer needs? That speaks very differently than I just did this thing for customer service that you can look up in Google and find the answer to. So just a part of this whole idea of being prepared is having that resume together, working on that. We talked about the resume being how you market yourself to start so that we can connect to the idea of getting the interview. And it's a living document because it always changes. Remember, we are changing our resumes depending on what we're applying to. Always remember that. We're not just, when we're sharpening the axe, it feels like a lot of work. But if you apply to something that's not the same, look at your document, change it accordingly. So we're saying we're being prepared. Another way that we're going to be prepared, we're going to make sure when we're preparing our resume and looking at that job, we're researching the employer or industry. Earlier, when I asked what's the purpose of an interview, and I was told that you need to find out if it's a good opportunity for you, and the employer needs to find out if you're the best candidate for the job. We need to understand what we're applying for. What industry is it? We need to understand the job description. What is it asking us for? We want to be prepared going into an interview. We want to be knowledgeable. So we need to do research. So the way to be prepared, get that resume together, do the proper research so that when it comes to get a call for that interview, you're ready. That resume is ready. And how is the resume going to be ready? I talked to everyone about conducting a self-assessment or a T-chart. So can somebody tell me what the purpose of, like, what do you do for a T-chart, if you remember? And I'll refresh you. 2 columns, right? That we put on paper when we have our job description. What do you do with the T-chart?
You put the business needs and then your needs and see if they try to match.
Okay, so very good. So what you're doing with the T-chart is you're taking the job description that you're applying to. And then on one side, you're writing down what is the employer looking for. That's going to take you looking at the job description. Read it. Don't just look at the title and go, I want to apply to that, and look at the money. Look at what are they asking me for. So I'm going to note some key things in my description. Then on the other side, because it looks like a T, then on the other side, you are going to match up what you've accomplished with the description of what they're looking for. So you're doing a self-assessment, because when you're applying to something, if the employer is looking for a specific something to call in for that interview, it has to match. There has to be some sort. Is it a perfect match? Absolutely not. It won't ever be. But when we do a T-chart, and I gave you this in the packet before, is that you're going to look at your description of that job. And then you're just going to match it up to what you've accomplished, what you've done. And you're marrying those two worlds together. So we're going to be prepared. We are going to read our job description, do the proper research on the job, on the employer. We're matching, what are they looking for? Because in every single description of a job, they're telling you what they're wanting. So you're just matching that up. If you are someone who, if you read a job description and they're looking for certain laboratory or tech skills, and they specifically align those things in the description, and you have none of those skills, but you've done great work as a teacher's assistant for a daycare, you can take some transferable skills. But what you want to look at is, they're looking specifically for laboratory skills. I don't have any. I may be able to market my transferable skills, like I am detail oriented, I can put those in, but I want to be able to make a marriage between what the employer wants and what am I offering? What have I accomplished? And so be very mindful of that. So number 3 was be prepared. Another way that you're prepared is to practice the answer to this question right here. Tell me about yourself. In almost every interview that you will go into, one of the very first questions is tell me about yourself. Almost every time. I have been in a lot of interviews, and this question always comes up. And so ultimately, how are we prepared? We have to practice this question. So when we're talking about ourselves, it's all professional. We are not talking about, when I was 7 and I moved from Connecticut, and then I came here, and then my mom, or like, yeah, this is where I live. Oh, I live in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and then we're not doing that. We're speaking of ourselves professionally. And so we're calling this a 30-second commercial or an elevator moment. When we talk about elevator moment, the reason this whole idea of the elevator pitch or moment is when a person, let's say we were in the elevator together, right? You have probably about, just a few seconds before the door opens. So they call it the elevator pitch because you are selling or presenting yourself in a short amount of time, the amount of time that it takes probably to get from one floor to the next in an elevator, so that you don't have to make this response super long. It's just that key information that connects to your professional piece while you're sitting in front of that employer for that interview. You're stating your skills, your and how your experience and how that relates to what you're applying for. So tell me about yourself. Be prepared to create an answer. I'm not asking anyone here to memorize an answer. You're not going to like write something down and then sound like a robot. Like, hello, my name is Quanesha Johnson. And then 5 years ago, I attended this program. You're not doing that. But you want to get in the habit. We're sharpening our axe. You wanting to get into the habit of practicing, preparing for this question, because you will have this question. You will have this question. And so start putting on paper, how am I marketing myself? So if I know I'm going to start applying to a certain type of job, yes, I might tweak my tell me about yourself, but ultimately I want to start designing the idea of what that would look like. Because if I, number one, as I said, sharpening your skills, know myself, I know what part of my professional life I'm putting in my 30-second commercial, in my elevator moment, what skills I'm highlighting. Right? Because if I apply, I run my own practice and my own business. But if I were to apply for a job, it would be something in counseling and something in education. So I'm going to design my elevator moment, my 30-second commercial. I'm going to talk about all my skills and experience in education and counseling, all my professional experience. So I'm going to tell them about myself in relation to what I've accomplished professionally. So prepare yourself for your interview by already getting comfortable with this question, because I said step 3 was be prepared. Anybody have any questions, comments? Remember, you are welcome to pop in the chat. So the other way we're preparing, I just want to give you all some samples of some interview questions that you could practice just reading them before you go to your interview. Okay. So number 1, we already talked about, tell me about yourself. Number 2, you might hear, where do you see yourself in 5 years? They want to know what you're focused on. What's your career focus? Because you may give an answer that makes them say, I don't want to hire them. They're not going to be here long. I need somebody with longevity. And they told me that this is just a 6-month thing. Just be mindful of how you're answering these questions. So remember, right now we're working on step 3, be prepared. So we're anticipating, I'm like I said, I'm reminding you, I've been in a lot of interviews. These are some of the same questions. Of course, the questions are often very specific to the company or the place I'm applying, but a lot of these questions are very standard. Prepare yourself. We don't have to get caught off guard. We're in preparation. We're sharpening our axe. We're preparing ahead of time. What's your greatest accomplishment? I underlined that word accomplishment because I remember I'm wanting you to see what you accomplish. If you have a job right now, I don't want you to look at it as I just go there and I work for a few hours and I get paid. I want you to see, what am I accomplishing when I'm doing there? What am I doing? It doesn't have to be this grandiose thing, right? If you are providing, like I said, impeccable service, if you know when you have to do a report for your job, you're a detail person. You're highlighting what you're getting done there, what you're doing, not the generic thing. They want to know why you're interested in working there. We don't, and they want to see the fit. You don't want to respond because I just want to, because a lot of people want to, because you pay nicely. Yeah. So that's probably everyone's answer to a degree, right? But ultimately, they want to hear, that's everyone's feeling, but they want to hear, why would you be a fit for this position? So why are you interested in specifically working there? You know what that goes back to? The research you do on the organization, the company, the store, the hospital, whatever you want, wherever you're going to work. So these are ways to sharpen your skills. So when you're there and they're asking these questions, you have some level of preparation. If we go back to, like I said, the resume section of being prepared, that idea of putting it together, you're preparing yourself. If we go back to the research part of the industry, knowing the job, the employer, you can answer this question. What would you consider your weakness, right? So we're not naming, well, I'm terrible at that, and I always like to reword the word weakness. I don't even like that word. So I don't even I always say in an interview, something that I'm working diligently on, improving in and growing in is this area. So providing that, know what that is, because you often get that question. Why should we hire you? You're restating your skills, any attributes, any experience. What makes you stand out for that position? I gave you these samples. You're going to get this in this packet so that you can look at them and practice and be prepared, because I guarantee you, if I gave all of you my email address, at some point when you interview, you'd be emailing me going, Quanesha, they did ask me 3 of these questions. So just a part of doing what you need to do is being prepared. Now we're going to go to step 4, everyone. You're very quiet, but I'm going to, and I don't see your faces. I'm hoping no one's laying in the bed or napping and that we're hearing everything I'm saying. And the only voice I often hear is Greg. So that's how I know, Greg, if you're there, everyone's there. Greg, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I knew Greg was there. Thank you, Greg. Okay, all righty. All right, so number 4, practice, practice, practice. 5 ways to sharpen your skills. Practice, practice, practice. So one thing, so this is how I'm going to revive you, and I got to hear other voices. I want you, this is how we're practicing. I want you to get into the habit of practicing the STAR interview technique. The STAR interview technique, which I will explain. Basically, the STAR method is a way to practice, because we're practicing, behavior-based interview questions. Behavior-based. So when I say, tell me about yourself, that's not behavior-based. If I'm an employer and I say, tell me about a time when, that is behavior-based. So I'm wanting everyone here to get into the habit of practicing behavior-based questions. They give you, those type of question prompts give you the real life example of how you would handle a certain situation at work in the past. You don't have to give an answer directly connected to the company or the place you're applying for, but they want to just hear how you handled XYZ situation. What did you do? Because in a lot of cases, even though I don't fully believe this, their mindset is past performance connects to future performance. So if you tell me what you did when you dealt with XYZ, maybe that's how you'll handle it for my company or for the position you're applying for. So how do we do this? And remember, we're in number 4, practice, practice, practice. You're going to first, right? So here we go. Tell me about a time, and I'm going to ask one person to practice this with me right now. And so we're going to demonstrate what it looks like, because we're sharpening our interview skills. So I want to practice what this looks like. We're doing the STAR method, STAR. These are behavior-based questions. The S in STAR is what was the situation you faced. The T is your task. The task that you undertook to address what the situation is. A is action, what was necessary to do. And R basically goes with what were the results. What ended up happening in the end. So I'm going to, I want to take a second to have one example. I need somebody to unmute themselves. Remember, this is not a right or wrong thing. It's just practice. And I'm going to give a behavior-based question. The answer could relate to any prior situation and you're going to tell me how you answered that, whatever that problem was, or dealt with that situation based upon STAR. So I need one volunteer. One volunteer. Want me to call on you? I know it's going to be Greg, but let's let Greg pick somebody. Greg, pick a friend.
That's foul. That's
I'm putting the pressure on you because this is for everyone, and I hear you a lot, and I appreciate your voice so much, and I love that you participate. And I'm not, I want to hear from it. I want to hear from someone because we're just going to do a practice, and I want to demonstrate. When I'm a teacher, I want to demonstrate what we're doing. So Greg, I won't put that pressure on you. Anyone, just volunteer just to I'm going to ask a real simple question and just to answer the question. Greg?
Yeah, what's up?
Okay, we'll just utilize you. And I'm going to give everybody's packet and remind them about communication. No communication is not communication. Just practicing, because you're going to be in situations where you're going to have to communicate. I know it's challenging. It's after lunch and everything. There's no wrong answer to this. It's just wanting you to see the demonstration of what doing it is. So can I give you a question, Greg, for your
Sarah said she could answer it. She just didn't know what the question. Sarah said
she
answered.
Sarah? Okay, Sarah, can I hear you? Where are you? I'm sorry, I didn't see it in the chat. Sarah?
She just needs to hear the question again.
Sure. Okay. No, I didn't give it yet. I was just wanting someone to volunteer. I'm going to have you answer the question through the STAR method, okay? So look on the screen and see STAR. So here's my behavior-based question. So as I was stating, I'm going to reiterate, as I was stating earlier, you're going to tell me about yourself. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, right? Those are not behavior-based. Behavior-based questions go with what would you do in a situation, okay? So because they're looking at what you would have done before to indicate what you might do now. So my question I have is, tell me about a time where you had to deal with a difficult person. It could be a customer, it could be a client. Tell me about a time where you had to deal with it. So I gave you a situation, right? I gave you this, I just gave you a question and you give me the STAR. So how would you answer that question, Sarah? A time you had to deal with a difficult person.
I was gonna type it, but I'd rather just talk.
Yes, I want to hear your voice. Okay.
I guess I would say that I don't have a specific. I can't think of a specific one on the spot, but I guess I would say something along the lines of when I have a situation where I have to deal with someone that's difficult. I make sure that I look at myself and I try and put myself in their shoes and in their situation, and trying to have compassion for that other person. I think about it in customer service, because that's where I want to go, because I want to be a farm tech at Walgreens. So I would have to think about if that person is snappy, especially if they're older, they're usually in a lot of pain. So I have to be compassionate to that, and I would have to make sure that I have my good attitude still, and treat everyone with a level of respect and compassion, because everyone's going through something different.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So let's put this in real life. I love the example. Let's do some STAR with it. So Sarah, you're my interviewer. Ask me that question.
How do you deal with a difficult situation? Give an example of a difficult situation that you've been in.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I had a situation where I was working about 2 years ago at Macy's, and I had a customer come to the counter, and she had a coupon that was expired, but she did not realize it. And so when I told her the coupon had expired, she was very, very upset. And she explained to me how she spends her money there, and how she wanted it to be honored anyway, and she received it in the mail and it came late, and she was so upset about it. So what I did was I said to her, I'm so sorry that we, sent the coupon late to you and that you missed the expiration date. And let me get 1 second. I'm going to walk over to my manager, and I'm just going to ask, is it okay if I just kind of honor that coupon and accommodate you? Because I know you're frustrated. You have a cart full of things. And so it must be frustrating to shop thinking you're getting the coupon amount and you don't. So give me one. So I said to her, give me 1 second. So I very quickly walked over to my manager, and I said, hey, this is what I didn't ask my manager for permission. I just said, I have this customer, I want to accommodate her. And so ultimately, I would love to be able to, I have extra 15% off star passes in my desk. I'm going to give that to her if that's okay with you. My manager agreed to it. And so I walked out. I explained to the customer that I had these 15% off passes, and I was so happy to accommodate her and to make sure that she updated her information with 1-800-Macy's.com so that they had the correct address and she can get her coupons in a timely manner. And how it resulted is she was a happy customer. She thanked me and was happy that I accommodated her, even though, the coupon was expired. And then my manager, who was a few feet away, my manager came over and told me, good job, because I handled it. Like I said, I didn't ask for permission. I just let my manager know, hey, I'm going to take some leadership and this is how I'm going to handle it. And so that's the result of dealing with someone who was pretty upset based upon nothing that I personally did and seen. And that's how I would answer. I started. I gave the situation and what I did to address it. It was necessary at that point to give her 15% off because I had tons in my drawer. And so it wasn't a big deal to give it to her. So it was necessary to please a customer than to lose a 15% coupon, right? And then what were the results? I explained. I now had a happy customer. I had a pleased manager with my leadership skills. And so do you see what I'm saying? It's now taking, and literally I made that up. I literally made that up right now. I am an actress, to let everyone know, in my mind. So I made that up just to demonstrate STAR. They are, like I said, although you can change as a person. So we're looking at prior behavior, but guess what? We change as people. Because let's say you had a job, Sarah, you said Walgreens, right? Let's say what you would have done at Walgreens last year, you had more, maybe you had more experience. This pandemic has matured us in different ways. Maybe how you may have handled something may not have been the same. But the employers look at it as, let me ask these behavior-based questions because I can get an outlook, a view of what they might do when they're in that situation here. Does anyone have any questions about what the example I gave, how I did it, anything that you want to share about, or questions about the STAR method? Oh, okay. Oh, Bailey, did you want to share something?
I don't have to, but I was going to do a scenario kind of like yours, but this is actually rooted in truth. Well, okay, I know yours is very believable. Mine is kind of not.
Okay, no, but it's okay. Go for it. I want to hear. I love hearing from you, and I want to hear your voice. So you share with us.
That. So last year, I was working at Centenary University bookstore. Mm-hmm. If I was in a job interview, I would say at my last job I was working at, we had a teacher that had decided they did not want to associate with the bookstore anymore, so they explicitly got books that were out of publishers that we were not in network with. So they would explicitly get it, so you could only get it off Amazon, whereas the school is legally required to have a store-based alternative in the actual school. That way their people with tuition can actually get there. So this professor was a prominent professor and was not able to be reprimanded for it. So instead, what I did was I started to go out of my way to start networking with the field office and with corporate.
Hmm.
And I decided to take it upon myself as my own personal project to build the relationship with the publisher that would have actually handled these books. And now they still, while that specific store closed, that company still uses that publisher now. And they still use the connection that I caused because I had decided to do that networking that day. Well, it was a series of projects for a couple of weeks, because that does not happen rather easily in a long network, an email chain, but it was very gratifying, and it's nice to know that you have an impact after everything.
Bailey, I love that. Like, I love that. And I made up my Macy's story, but I used to work at Macy's and I have had difficult customers, so I embellished. So, but I have had that. But what you just did and how you did it. You were concise. So it was a couple of minutes, no more than that, really. The situation, I heard your task, the action, the result. So I'm an employer. I hear leadership. I hear initiative. I hear patience, because it wasn't an easy situation. And so that's what I'm listening for. And so ultimately, that's why I'm saying, if I'm an employer and I'm asking you that question, I'm like, this person took the initiative. That's why you know how you just said how gratifying, how it felt to make that impact and do that? That's what I mean by noting your accomplishments. If you were just to put down on your resume that you worked at the bookstore and the generic duties, just that of working at the bookstore, and not note your initiative and leadership in orchestrating something, like, you would be doing your resume a disservice. So what Bailey gave, that's it right there. That's behavior based. And I got results. She told me what happened in the end and what it looked like. And then she demonstrated for me who she was, what the initiative she took, the leadership, right? Everything. I got to, from that story, I got to know a little bit more about Bailey. And that's what I'm saying to you all to be mindful to do, to practice. The reason I was able, like I said, to draw up for myself a creative story, because like I said, I've worked for Macy's. I've worked in multiple customer service. So it's not, if you work in customer service, if you all know whoever's done it, you're going to come with difficult people. Hey, like, I'm just telling you right now, if you haven't come across, they're coming. They are coming for you. And so I was able to draw something, it was fictitious, but in the sense of I did have the experience. I have had to take initiative. I've had to accommodate someone. And so it wasn't so hard to make it up. But that's perfect, what she did for us today, that example. That's what I want you, when we're thinking about this step 4, practice, we're practicing, because these situations are going to happen. You're going to get these questions. You're going to get them. So why not be prepared in some sense for some of those generic interview questions that are generic, that they just ask you in general? Because I've been on the other side also, where I've been the person interviewing people. Like, when I worked at schools and different colleges, I would be a part of that process. Of like, they'll have a panel. And I remember them giving us a packet of questions that were generic to ask people. Some had to do with the college I worked at or the school, but a lot of them were the questions I'm talking to you about right now. So just be mindful, practice. And our last and final tip is learn from your experience. Step 5, way number 5, in sharpening interview skills is the learning process. I'm going to tell you why the learning process is so experienced, because you will have another interview. And the more that you understand your experience when you do interview, even if you don't get it, the more you'll do better the next time around. So what I'm asking you to do is note the following when you're learning. Were there any questions that you had difficulty answering? Because I've had that before, where I'm like, I answered it, but I wasn't so sure of how to answer it, or didn't really know, or I wasn't knowledgeable of that area. So I'm paying attention to that, and I'm noting that so that I can figure out how to answer that possibly for next time. Then I want to ask myself, if I do an interview, was I prepared to answer that question? Any question? Was I prepared? I want to know. Because I've had times back in the day where I really wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared. But it's not for me to kick myself. It's so that I can sharpen my axe. I can practice. I can help with my confidence. I can sharpen my communication skills. And so that I can be better next time. I'm always telling you all to note the feeling. How did you feel during your interview? Were your nerves overpowering you, right? So how do we get ahead of that? How do we work through that? One way is saying, like, you're going to be nervous. Anything new is a little bit, you have a little bit of anxiety with it. We don't want it to overwhelm and overcome us. We want to make peace with it. Like, I'm a little nervous, but if I'm doing all of the steps we've talked about today, my nerves are just natural nerves. I won't allow it to overwhelm me. A little bit of nervousness, it's healthy. It's not a bad thing. It shows I care about what I'm doing. So how did I feel? Did I feel confident? So what is this feeling? So I'm always just asking everyone to note this feeling. Did I have a lack of confidence when I was there? And then lastly, did you ask any questions? Always have questions. And the question we're not asking, and that's for another session, is we're not going in our interview and just saying like how much you pay? Like, what's the rate? Like, we don't ask that immediately. Sometimes in your ad you're applying to, but that's not our first line of questioning, okay? So we're noting everything about the experience, because our step number 5 in sharpening is learn from your experience. Learn. Learning helps us to grow. And so I'm reviewing once again, 5 ways to sharpen your interview skills. Number 1, knowing who you are. When I know who I am, I'm also noting how I'm feeling about myself, about getting this new job, about the interview process, about my confidence. Am I dealing with imposter syndrome? Am I accomplishing, achieving? Do I meet the qualifications of this job, but yet I still feel like I'm just not going to get it? Another important piece about knowing who you are, when you work to know who you are and deal with the fact that everything you apply for, you won't get, it doesn't take away from number 1. If you are who you are, if you work hard, a lot of times not getting a job is not about you bombed the interview, your resume was terrible. It's just sometimes about like you just weren't chosen. You weren't chosen because someone just was a little bit better of a fit for that specific position. It doesn't take away from your intelligence. It doesn't rob you of your experience. It doesn't mean you're no good, you won't get a job, but it doesn't mean those things. Being confident in your skills, your accomplishments, your abilities, they can't correlate exactly with someone saying no to you, because they'll tell us no. I've been told no a lot in jobs, but it doesn't take away from who I am. So the more that you build the confidence, know what you have to offer. Work on that piece that a no from someone doesn't kind of turn your world upside down. It kind of fuels us to keep going. So number 2, utilizing good communication sharpens your skills. Being aware of your verbal skills, working on that, right? Posture. What verbal are we giving off? When we're in an interview, are we smiling, right? Being mindful of that when we're there. Being prepared, preparing through research, reading our job description, researching the company, knowing what they're looking for, knowing what we have to offer, being prepared. Number 4, constantly practicing. Tell me about yourself. Behavior-based interview questions. What do those look like? Let me practice with someone the way that we did here. Practicing, sharpening the axe. And then the last and final is learning from the experience. So when you do an interview, when you have a job, you're learning. Bailey's story about her job at the bookstore, it's a learning experience. She learned something about herself, her abilities, what she can do. You bring that into your interview. Know who you are, good communication, be prepared, practice, and learning from the experience. Those are the 5 ways to sharpen your interview skills. And so we are at the end, my friends. And so lastly, just knowing this, a job interview is not a test. Tests make us feel too nervous and overwhelmed. It's not a test of your knowledge. It's your ability to use it at the right time. So when you apply for something, you know you got skills, you're smart, you're capable, right? They're not testing what you know. It's more so of all of those things I have, I'm going to access it at the right time. I know I'm confident, but that has to show in the interview. It's having your skills, your knowledge, and being able to demonstrate everything you have to offer when you're sitting in front of that person. So it's not a test of your knowledge, but it's your ability to do those things. Thank you all. That concludes our time on 5 ways to sharpen